DJ Dewey Rock on the track.
Welcome to E-Merch Podcast 360. I'm your host, Maserati. I want to thank you for tuning in. No matter where you are in this metaverse world, we're going to continue to bring you the best quality content and formula that we know how. We want to thank you guys for all the likes, shares, and love and subscriptions we have received on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. This show is being brought to you by Involved Social and Civic Club and Morehouse Community Development. Hey, we have a very special guest for this Pioneer Wednesday. We have legislator dropping through the building. Hey, once again, if you guys would like to have someone on the show, hit us up at emergepodcast.com at gmail.com. Hey, once again, we got a very special guest. She's a pioneer in the political field. She was born in Monore, Louisiana. She's a graduate of Carroll High School. She went on to ULM, where she received her bachelor's degree, and she went to Southern University of Baton Rouge at the University Law Center. Her profession is a law firm where she has a firm where she has associates. She went on to be a representative of the legislator for Louisiana, where she would end up being the senator for our 34th district of Louisiana, representing Ouachita and Morehouse Parish. She's a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated. I give you none other than Miss Katrina Renee Jackson. How you doing today, Senator?
Oh, good morning. Good afternoon. I'm wonderful. How are you?
We're fine. We're grateful to have you on, and your resume is so outstanding. We're going to let you explain it, all these awards and accolades that you have. I'll get tongue-tied trying to say all this stuff.
Oh, no problem. But it is just, I tell people this, I am just a normal person, as you know, that God is using. And so whatever resume I have, I attribute it to those who, number one, got into those who God had put into my life. That's what I am. I started out actually as a student worker for Willie Hunter, then Representative Willie Hunter, probably back in 1997, 1998. Went on to law school after my college experience and came home to practice law, believing that's what I was going to do. I had no desire to enter the political arena, even though he was a state rep. The way we figured it is he was spending so much time in Baton Rouge at that time that I would come home as an attorney, and there would be an attorney in the firm when he was gone. And that's how we planned it. But I guess God, I know now God had other plans. And so I went back to be labor committee attorney for the House of Representatives. And people ask me, well, how did you make that move? It wasn't a political move. I had joined, I was fellowshipping at a church, a home away from home in Baton Rouge. And I was still driving every other week there. I felt like, there was still, God still had something left for me in Baton Rouge regarding my spiritual life. And I ended up back in Baton Rouge working as attorney for Labor Committee. After 2 years, I ended up being promoted to executive director of the Legislative Black Caucus. I ran for office is simply how I do everything with prayer and understanding from God that it became necessary. I had served with people like Representative Willie Hunter, Senator Charles Jones. I had served them in staff and others. And we had, for the first time, term limits. And so I was still staffing during that new term limit. And I realized, if you remember the Jindal days, anybody remember those, right? Education had been cut 60%. Healthcare had been drastically cut. Access to healthcare had been cut. So we were in those days, and there was such a high turnover of the legislature. At some point in prayer, I wasn't praying to run, but I felt, led to run, and I ran for office for a representative, and now I'm senator. It just goes like that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And people know you now. You're nationally known for the abortion bill that you wrote. But I want to kind of tell us about how it was for you growing up as a little girl.
I am the fourth child of 5 children in the home. My parents are both remarried. And so my mother had 5 children. I'm the fourth of five, and my stepfather has three children. And and if you hear all the noise in the background, I want to apologize to the listeners. I'm actually preparing for midweek service. And my stepfather had three children, and my stepmother has two children. So I grew up in a blended family, and I had a wonderful time as a child. If we were lacking, I didn't know it, right? Because even after my parents divorced, my mom stayed single until I think I was 9. And every day I walked home to my grandmother's house with my sisters and my cousins, and that's how life was. And we were just one big family. And we did a lot together growing up. And so all I know is family at that time. I had great friends. I actually am still friends with some of my friends from pre-kindergarten because we ended up in school together after that and just kind of followed each other. I just had a normal childhood like anyone else in the South.
Right, most definitely. And I can hear that you're a very humble person, and your parents and upbringing had a great role in the path and direction that you took. But this is what we want to know from you. What does a typical work week look like for Senator Jackson?
It varies. I am not only a senator, as you said, but I'm an attorney by trade. That is how we make a living. A lot of people think kind of like we're like Congress, meaning that they believe that we are paid as full-timers at like 100 and some thousand, 200,000 a year. We only make about 16 to 17,000 as a legislator. So our well-being depends on us working our full-time jobs, which is the job of, for me as an attorney. Typical week is probably 10 plus hour days. At some point during those days, there's some days like Mondays and Thursdays, I'm usually going to have court on those days. Right after court, I may go into my legislative role if there are events or constituents that need help. At some part of the day, I switch back over to legal. And then if there are evening events or evening things I need to do, we take care of those. And I get home and I continue to work the law practice, usually from the house. And that happens 5 days a week. Some days, now during session, that changes. We have a legislative continuance on our legal cases. So I spend anywhere from Monday to Wednesday or Monday to Thursday in Baton Rouge in legislative session. Those days change because I'm usually hitting the floor about 6 a.m. for prayer call, like I do at home. And after that, I work legally. Most of our committees start between 9 and 9:30. Then I transition and commit to committee. And those days could go in the Capitol toward the end of session till around 9 or 10 o'clock p.m.
Wow. So you're pretty much busy staying on top of your law practices and trying to make sure we get the best benefit from you as being our senator. But what is it that you like most, Senator Jackson, about what you do as a lawyer and as a legislator?
It often merges. And the work may be different, but it's all one come and go, seeing justice happen for people and helping people. So I like that the most, being able to effectuate change for a broad group of constituencies, but for individuals who are needing help, who may not know how to be directed, who have been for years working on something, and they come to your office and you're able to get it done quickly, or either it's just been moments and they've had issues and we're out helping people. So really just effectuating change in the law and helping people along the way.
Right. And it's like, how is it being in a position where you're going to be loved and hated for the decisions that you make? How do you deal with that mentally, Senator Jackson?
Sometimes I deal with it well, and it's all encouragement, and it's going to happen. And some days it's harder. It just depends on what's going on in your personal life at the time and what you're juggling at that time. And so I depend on my parents and brothers a lot to help me when the harder times come. I'll be very transparent on that. And my friends, and sometimes it's just hard and sometimes it's easy. My pastor told me something one time that made sense. He said, who are you to think that everyone's going to love you when they hated Jesus and he died for us? That stuck with me. Now, I'm not going to tell you that sometimes it helps all the time, right? Because sometimes you're just sick of it. And you're like, God, when you're getting the death threats like I've had, or you are being criticized or, talked about, it gets, But in all, I'll tell you, it's still worth it. You have to have thick skin and realize that every day is not going to be a day where people cheer you on. That no one that has ever effectuated change in this world has done so without racism and being hated and sometimes loved, and all in the same day by the same person.
Right. And we're going to take an intermission break, but when we come back, we want to kind of jump into some of the dislikes you just spoke about, the criticism, but we also want to jump in and get into the mind of Senator Jackson about this abortion bill that you wrote. And I want to kind of get your rationale on it and why you made the decision that you made after we come from this intermission break.
Most definitely.
We'll be right back with our own beloved Senator Katrina R. Jackson when we return after this intermission.
Immerse 360 Podcasts focuses on uplifting rural and urban areas and dire conditions with no solutions by shedding light on pioneers, athletes, and political figures who have made an impression on Northeast Louisiana and surrounding areas. Immerse understands the social and civic needs to love, learn, live, and laugh. So tap in every Sunday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. on all social networks and platforms. Always remember, Immerse 360.
Welcome back. This portion of the show is being brought to you by Burchell Family Insurance Agency and Bro Inc. Photography. And shout out to Kick Thrones here in Scrap City, Louisiana. We're still here with our own beloved Senator Katrina Jackson is on the phone lines, and we're finna jump into some of these hot topics that she's grown national attention for about this abortion bill. But first, Senator Jackson, you were sharing with us some of the likes and the dislikes. Kind of jump in and share with us like some of the don'ts that you just wish you didn't have to wake up and face.
Well, most of it is you just kind of get up some mornings and wish you didn't have to face criticism, like when you're fighting to, level out the criminal justice system and what it means to African Americans, and how, we've had a higher incarceration rate. When you're fighting, quite frankly, for life from the womb to the tomb, or the bill I filed to get rid of, the death penalty last year that didn't pass, things like that. You literally feel like, okay, this shouldn't be necessary.
Most definitely. Go ahead.
So, you really feel like that shouldn't be, it's not necessary and you shouldn't have to go through it. It's just the simplest stuff where people feel like, you shouldn't be fighting for it. I remember when we were experiencing the cuts to higher education and healthcare, and Governor Edwards had just came into office, and we were trying to figure out how to stop this bleeding. And people were heavily critical, of the fact that I had the clean penny bill, which added a clean penny of sales tax around the state until we could recover financially from the Jindal years. And I remember when it first started, people hated it, and people thought that it was unnecessary, even though our kids and our education system, our healthcare system was suffering. And I endured that for weeks. And all of a sudden, when people like the Chambers of Commerce and others realized that it was needed, it shifted to almost like, you're the hero of this session. We needed this. And those are things that kind of, after you get 1,000, emails, or their form emails are ridiculousness, that I can handle, all of that. But when it gets into, like I said, those personal issues of the death penalty, or eliminating the death penalty, or dealing with the criminal justice system, before criminal justice reform packages came out, a year or two before that, while I was in the House, I decreased the time that people had to serve on nonviolent offenses with a bill. And I remember getting massive emails that we should never decrease the time. And so I started the criminal justice reform process before it became popular, before anyone else announced it, right? So you take great criticism from that, and just things that you know are right, but you're being clobbered in the media or with others by it.
And you know, I'm with you on that, and I can feel your pain, because you know you passed the bill about the abortion. You wrote the bill up, and it's a beautiful bill. And then the criticism come. You know, from the outside looking in, it was you could do nothing wrong until this bill. Kind of share with us the rationale. You've been an attorney, you've been a legislator and a senator, and being a female. Give us the rationale behind the decision of writing an abortion bill.
Well, let me say this. It was not my first bill regarding abortion at all, okay? So that's the misnomer. But it's more about life to me and less about abortion. What I mean by that is I've expanded and been true to the calling that I am, pro-life from the womb to the tomb. So you often see me doing legislation, advocating in certain areas in the budget to make sure we have programs that offer hand up and not a handout to people, where, you know, where people can actually do what they need to do for themselves. And so when I look at that, for me, it's very important. For some others, it may not be as important, but for me, it is. And so it's important because, you know, as a whole, that's the only option that I've seen African-American women and women of low income receiving during their pregnancy. There were so many issues with low birth rates and mortality rates of African-American women and those of low incomes because of access to health care that no one was answering the question about. And what I saw was people telling us that abortion was the only answer. Life is precious at any stage. What we do with our lives matter. Will we have an opportunity for our children to have the same American dream as others is important. So I take it from that stance. So I had passed bills a number of times regarding that. Now, this one was more of an isolated bill because it was passed right before Roe versus Wade. That was a great misunderstanding that, oh, Senator Jackson is writing the law. The law was already in effect. It had great recourse, though, against women who, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, would have decided to have an abortion in our state. They would have went to jail. That's one thing that why I amended the law to take that out. I did add some extra penalties for physicians because I didn't want physicians to set up backroom alleys and charge all people $400 and $500 and kill them. So that was twofold. So it's very important to know that the law was already in place. Okay. And the law would have sent women to jail, and that was an issue. And so that's why, for me, it became vitally important to do something about it. Although I'm pro-life and I don't hide behind that, that was an issue. And people don't realize that the trigger law was already into effect. You know, the trigger law was already in effect. Some things needed to be changed in the trigger law, like women going to jail, if that makes sense.
Yes, ma'am.
And there was some other matters that needed to be changed, and we had a lot of conflicts in laws. So the law was already there. I amended it, and I'm still, regardless of all the criticism, happy that I did, because the first woman that would have gone to jail for having an illegal abortion, everyone would have said, "Why is that in the law?" Well, I knew it was in the law. I knew it needed to be changed.
Right, like you said, I'm pro-life. And I don't. It's a touchy subject because I'm a man, and I consider it cat fighting. You know, if you ask me, that's a woman's thing. But I guess along the lines, it should be stipulations. Like if you're married, do you have the consent of your husband? Then some infidelity may be discovered. If it's incest, do we need some type of evidence? Just along with rape, it should be a rape kit presented. And I'm kind of with you. If you're out here having sex and you're committing infidelity, you're just out here freelancing, having sex, and want to have abortion, you know, that's we got to have accountability for having intercourse, knowing the outcome. Do you agree with me, Senator?
I agree with a lot of people say that's negative. Why should I suffer the consequences? It's not suffering the consequences. of anything. It's about us being more cognizant and being adults about our behavior. That's basically how I see it. And I'm glad you said exceptions. Also, I added the exception of medical futility, because if the law would have went in effect as it has been since 1990, before I came to the legislature, when Roe versus Wade was overturned, women who were told that their babies were not viable and that fetus, would never live, wouldn't be able to have an abortion today in this state. And I added that exception.
Wow. And it's kind of, like I say, it's a sticky subject, not just touchy, but, the backlash you get from it, and then you look into it, you always, to me, have the best interest of the whole and not just individuals or a certain sector of people. You have the whole people in mind. Let's jump into this education. What are some of the steps that you're helping, bringing forth to help the public school system come out of the shadows now, or charter schools?
Okay, so number one, with public school systems, I passed a bill about when I was in the House of Representatives that would have offered a tax rebate to those who donated to public schools. And so that passed by an overwhelming majority vote. But again, it was during the agenda years, and he vetoed it. And we don't know why. He didn't issue a reason why he vetoed it, because he had just signed one into law for private schools. So now that bill is being drafted again for DNF schools, and I'm actually presenting it this session, would allow people to donate to DNF schools, public schools, and receive the same 95% of their donation tax credit as they do with private schools. It's not a war whether it's against private or public schools. People have a right to open a private school, but also Louisianians should have a right to donate where they choose to, where their kids go to school and where their community goes to school. And that was something that really I think is something that once passed that I believe really will be impactful. My clean penny bill that I talked about had a major impact on higher education and K through 12 education. The state funds K through 12 partially by the MFP. During the years of a deficit, nothing was happening. You couldn't fund it. We couldn't increase it. So it was just staying at the same level. Once the clean penny bill passed, of course, it came to a new level. And we're able to fund it better now. And so you have that. I've passed so many bills and participated so much. One thing I fight for each year is the teacher's pay raise. That's extremely important, because you're talking about keeping qualified individuals in education, but not paying them what they need to be paid. So what you saw on a large scale is individuals leaving the state of Louisiana to go teach other places, which was a drastic drain on our educational system and our, kids' ability to learn with qualified teachers. That's one thing. And a number of others, but just funding for education has been drastically important. Funding for early childhood education is where we've geared most of our focus lately, because we know a child learns a certain percentage of what they're going to learn before they're 5 years old. So getting them ready for kindergarten is very important. Whether the parent is involved or not, we should be involved. And that's what I tell everyone. And we should be concerned about those students. And so we've just kind of tilted our efforts to that, while still fighting for pay raises, making sure the MFP is increased. One thing I'm doing outside of education right now for rural areas, the state funds capital outlay, which is infrastructure, for municipalities and parish governments. Well, our smaller municipalities in North Louisiana, we can't afford the small municipalities to do the state match of 25%, right? So even though we put it in the budget for them, a lot of times they can't pull it down. My bill this year would decrease the state match for municipalities in rural areas that have less than so many constituents. And I apologize for the background noise. I told you I'm transitioning the church.
Go ahead.
It will decrease the state match to 10%. That means our rural areas can finally start taking part in what everyone else is taking part in, and that's the state infrastructure program. For example, this is the best way I can say it. You're expected in the town of Bastrop, our Colliston, to pay 25% of what I put in the budget for you for infrastructure. Well, that's the same 25% that Baton Rouge and New Orleans pays.
Wow.
And so I know it's going to be a hard, feat in the legislature, but I have filed that bill for this year because it's just there is not balance. This is what I tell people, whether it's education, whether it's funding or anything else, healthcare or access. I tell people this: equity looks. Picture, I talked about it just recently. There were 3 little girls standing at a gate, African American girls, looking over at a carnival that said white only, okay? Mm-hmm. And the first picture has 3 boxes of the same height. The problem with that is the 5-year-old still couldn't see, even though she had the same height box. The 7-year-old could see only to a certain level on the fence, but what looked like a 10-year-old could see everything. Then there's a second picture where the 5-year-old had a higher standing box because she needed it. The 7-year-old had the medium-sized box, and the 10-year-old, who didn't need but a little boost, had the other box, and they could all see everything they needed to see. That's how equity looks to me. And it's the same thing in our households every day. What does equity look like? And why is the state constantly, in the United States, constantly only looking to give? They say, we give this person $10, we give you $10. Well, that person you're giving the $10 to may make $30 an hour, right? Yes, and so they don't need as much help as the person who's making minimum wage. So I try so much when I'm talking to people to say equity is different from equality. What you want is equity. You want the same opportunity as American dream as anyone else has. And how do we do that? And how do we facilitate that?
Yes, ma'am. And that's so important. You answered the question that I was going to bring up next about what are some of the programs and how we bringing people back, especially here up in northern Louisiana, what type of opportunities and jobs and programs we're bringing here to attract people to come back home. Because like I say, I know my generation, quite a few of us have degrees, BAs and beyond. But when we get ready to return home, there's no opportunities, or you still have people that's been in those positions for 60 and 70 years, still holding them up stagnant.
Right. And I think sometimes the issue is not who's there more than what has been created. Because if your economic development system truly works, then the development of what they said we've passed in years past and what we do on jobs and how we handle economic development as employers will press into needing more employers. Now, it is true, some people this may be time to go home and retire, but we don't know what they're facing financially at home. Some people cannot survive off retirement because different companies offer different levels of retirement. That's the thing about the state. State workers make less pay than they would make in the private sector most of the time, right? But that's because they're retired with 80+% of their salary. So the person we're looking at to say, are you just holding this job? Maybe they are. Maybe it's time to go home. But most of the time they're holding their job because their bills dictate it. Right. So we're in creating new jobs? Where are we in creating an economic system where employees are in demand and treated fairly and paid fairly? That's really the goal.
And you made go ahead, Mrs. Go ahead, Senator.
We have Congress right now trying to raise the age of retirement, trying to raise the age that you would qualify. And although they say they're not, raising the age of retirement is a serious issue.
And that's the next thing I was going to get into about, I'm just looking at my future, about time I get ready for Social Security. It'd probably be 80 years old would be the max that you have to be before you can draw Social Security and things of that nature. It's kind of like they keep moving the field goal post every time we get ready to kick a field goal.
Right. And that's why we, of course, have to be accountable for what happens to us. But we need a fair and equitable chance to reach an age that we can retire comfortably without retiring and not being able to afford even, assisted living as far as, income-based housing. and where we can stay in our own houses if we're healthy and still be able to afford our bills and still be able to live a good life. No one wants to work up until 70 or 80 years old and not be able to afford, where they live because the retirement plan was so egregious. How does that look, and how do we get to a place where every American has that chance? People can talk, but the truth is, being pro-life means, if you're like me, you have your own definition. It means I'm pro-life from the womb to the tomb. That means that you can't ask a woman not to have an abortion, but not be willing to legislate laws that allow her to, have a chance to take care of her child. That's an issue. And now I will be the first to admit that in America, being pro-life has begun to mean something else, and it means to being pro-abortion. So I want to draw that distinction. Against abortion. Some people are pro-life, and that means that they're trying to figure out how to take care of that child from the time they're conceived until the time they pass, and make sure that child has every opportunity in life. And some people are just against abortion. Means they're fighting against abortion, but will not vote for any piece of legislation to offer their child a better life. And I think that's why it's been highly criticized lately, because what the headline reads and what those who are on the national stage are saying is much different from what pro-life means. And I keep going back to that because I want to home in on that the parent or the person who's at the school every day, who's volunteering, who's taking care of those children once or twice a week, they're pro-child. There is a difference. So the question really on the mainstream stage regarding abortion is whether you're against abortion or you're really pro-life. If you're pro-life, your vote's going to show that you're pro-life not only when the child is in the womb, but also when the child is born into a neighborhood that doesn't offer a decent school system, that you're going to pass legislation and funding that brings that school system out of what they're in. Because if you do that, if you cannot vote for that, then I submit to you, you're against abortion, but you're definitely not pro-life, because the only child you're looking at is a child in the womb.
And we're going to stamp that right there, Senator, because, you done broke it down. There's nothing else to be said about it, because your rationale makes sense. And that's all we ask here at Emerge 360. We want all things just to make sense. But we're going to take our last intermission and get the final thoughts and statements from you about your plans and what you would like to see the future of Louisiana be headed down the path, and what are some of the plans you have for your personal future as things go along. Is that okay?
Yes, most definitely.
We'll be right back with our own beloved, a.k.a. Senator Katrina R. Jackson. We'll be right back.
They say from God is to the ghetto. Don't run away from you. Don't run away from you. If all your dreams of a video fixing don't come true, don't run away from you. Don't run away from you. Young King Thug Boss, young Prince of the ghetto. Don't run away from you. Don't run away from you. If all your dreams of a big time drug dealer don't come true, don't run away from you. Don't run away from you.
Now if you've seen what I've seen, I know you extra the game. They're giving catch-20 to life over crumbs of cocaine. How could this happen to us?
Welcome back to Emerge Podcast 360. This portion of the show is being brought to you by 44 Million ENT and Brass Section on Facebook, thanks to Stardom Network, Psycho Astronauts, Line I, Club Planet, Funksville, and Real Talk with Miss Nisi. We're still here with our own beloved and trusted, I'm going to say that, make this be known, and I say trusted, Senator Katrina R. Jackson. Senator, when we left, you broke down your theory, your philosophy, and your rationale on being pro-life, not just anti-abortion, but pro-life. You made a distinction between the two. But this is what we want to do on the final thoughts. What does the future look like for you when it comes to Louisiana and for yourself as an attorney?
For Louisiana, as long as my constituents are there and we're serving regardless I'm serving in a senatorial capacity or in a community organizing capacity, wherever I am in Louisiana, which I'll be in my district somewhere, even if I'm, after my terms are over, I am looking for a Louisiana that offers our children a fighting chance, that offers adults jobs that pay them a fair wage. And not only a living wage, but something that gives them a little bit more that they can enjoy. Also, a Louisiana where constituents take some responsibility for what needs to be done. That we come together and realize what we're doing in our community with violence and black-on-black crime and what we're seeing, that will end. And that we will work together to equitably offer people a chance and an opportunity. Now, that just doesn't happen by someone's voice speaking it. That happens by us working together. I would love to see our communities change back into what it was as far as it takes a village to raise a child, and us helping and assisting each other without us being offended, and us loving each other in a way that makes Louisiana better. That's what my heart is for Louisiana, that nobody's left behind, that we know that we respect and take care of our senior citizens and their contributions that they've done for us. And that when funding comes up and we're fighting for senior citizen funding, that people are standing with us. But also that we're looking at those who are less fortunate and seeing how we can help them and whether laws fairly assess them a chance, a handout instead of a hand up. Coming to the table, I have a piece of legislation that created a task force to start looking at that, and we've been working at that. A Louisianian that's just fair to everyone and offers everyone a chance. Now, I know utopia will not happen. I know that, right? Because we live on earth. So we know that spiritually utopia is only in heaven, where, you know what I mean?
Right.
But what we can do for each other is look out for each other. What we can do for each other is to create opportunities for each other and to show our children how important an education is and how important it is to pay attention in school and just to show our community something different. But the bottom line is a house divided against itself cannot stand. So Louisiana has been divided too long. How do we come together? That's the Louisiana I want to see. How do we stop talking about what needs to be done and get in the ring and fight for it? That's what I look forward to in Louisiana for myself. I practice law and I love it. I don't know if I'll do it for the rest of my life. I am recently engaged. We just set a wedding date.
Congratulations. I didn't want to get in your business, but I was going to ask you when Sam was getting married.
Okay, yeah, and he's a Bastrop man. He's from Morehouse Parish.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
And so we just set a wedding date, and this is breaking news because my family just found out 2 hours ago, but we will be getting married on October the 21st right here in District 34. And so we're excited about that. And so, of course, I will be in submission to my husband on what happens, regarding our careers and things of that nature. But I will tell District 34 this. He is committed to me remaining a senator. He says he believes that the work I do is extremely important, and he stands with me on it. So that was very important for me, that who I married understood the need for service in our community, but service in our state as well. So personally, I plan on keep doing what I'm doing, regardless of what capacity I'm in. What capacity I serve in. I just want to see our neighborhoods better, our cities better, and us thriving again.
Most definitely, and we appreciate everything that you're doing for Louisiana. We wanted to get you on. You're a pioneer, you're an icon, and you are a beacon light not only to young ladies but to Afro-American and Americans, period. About standing on your square and what you believe in. And we are proud of you. And like I said, people, we voted for her and we got to trust her. We can agree to disagree, but I think we need to start trusting our political figures here locally. Don't worry about Washington, but she's very approachable. I approached her to get this interview. It wasn't anything, a big I, a little you. So just cut it out. You can talk to her, and if you have questions about decisions she makes, she's here at all type of forums and events. Pull her to the side, and I'm quite sure Senator Jackson will answer you. Am I right about that, Senator?
Oh, yes, most definitely. You know, I'm always in the community. I love the community. One thing I'm looking forward to right now is the Crawfish Festival we become a sponsor of, and March and May Madness. I'm telling you, I'm looking so forward to those because it gets us back out in community post-COVID like it did last year. And we'll be there. And I shop on the square all the time. We actually, Sam does too. My engagement ring came from Steve Jewelers. So we are there and we are approachable at all times.
Yes, ma'am. And we're going to let you get back to the rest of your busy day. You're getting ready for service. We want to thank you once again for dropping through and shedding that light on us and being a beacon light and being a representative of how it should be for Scrap City and Louisiana alike. And any last words before we let you go?
Nothing at all besides this. You can always reach me on my office phone, even though you see me on the move all the time. If you call my office phone or email me, my staff sends real-time messages to my text message. So as soon as I'm coming out of one event, going to another, I'm making calls. I really believe that if we stand together, we may not always agree, but if we begin to disagree with being respectful and come to the table on things that matter most to us and to our community, we will see change. We've seen change in 11 years. We've come out of a major time of deficit where Delta Community College and our K through 12 system, we're seeing cuts. We know we need more economic development in Morehouse Parish and all over Northeast Louisiana, especially post-COVID. We need to come together and agree on that and begin to work on that. You have elected officials working on that. You have people that are in the economic development fields and careers working on that. We need you with us. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And we're going to get out of here. That was our own beloved Senator, Miss Katrina R. Jackson, the epitome of an AKA. Hey, we want to thank you guys for stopping through for this lovely Wednesday night, a Pioneer Wednesday. This show has been brought to you by Yo Looking Ass Entertainment, Miss Sequisa Gibbons of Above Average Healthcare, and your own Involved Social and Civic Club, where we understand the social and civic needs of love, learn, live, and laugh. Until next time, y'all stay involved. Y'all stay encouraged. And most of all, y'all stay immersed. We out of this thing.
Head to the sky. Head to the sky. You thought it was gone, but I made it through the fire. Turned your back on me, homie, and it was such a surprise. But the struggle out here, everybody just trying to get by. Mama told me a long time ago, keep my grass cut low, so I can see these snakes when they approaching my door. In this game, I seen a lot of soldiers sell their soul for the bag. And I seen a lot of close friends fall out behind ass. That's why I keep my circle tight, family over everything. Family over everything. Told at a young age, don't be scared and never let hang. Man, it's law of attraction, got me moving how I move. And along the way, some you win, some you lose. Yeah, life is lesson. Truth handed to an innocent child. These streets done got real crazy. These youngsters buck wild. Not to mention, cops killing brothers for fun. Revolutionary prepare from the dough. The chosen ones. DJ.